Is it right? Yes, can you hear me? Okay. So, hello to everybody. I had to change a little bit my concept because I thought I can read all this on the screen. So I printed it now, so sometimes I will have to take a look into my papers. So my presentation has the title Art, Identity and Remembrance. During the next 15 minutes, I will talk about my own work, not about the work of other artists. I am a visual artist working more than 30 years, beside of other projects also on development of concepts and designs related to memorials, which should keep and preserve remembrance to victims of Holocaust. My approach to face such challenges, mainly during some art competitions, is first to study the natural, physical, architectural, topographical, and social attributes of given site, as well as to study available historical materials. Then, in the second step, I seek for a way how to transform or integrate some of these attributes into the design of the artwork. This schematic drawing, in this schematic drawing is mentioned or are mentioned some main points when I deal with such a task to design an artwork regarding remembrance to victims of Holocaust. Jewish symbols are providing an associative link to the subject. Names of Holocaust victims enable the individualization of history. Furthermore, I consider Holocaust survivors as a very important human link between past, present, and future. In my designs, survivors are significantly influencing the concept as well as the visual appearance of my memorial designs. Oh, sorry. I tried already in 1994 to introduce the survivors into artwork during the competition in Berlin for the main memorial, which was to be built there. And in this art and architecture solution of the memorial, there was a central place planned, a room of fate, where the ways of death and those who survived are splitting. So it was somewhere here in the middle. I have no time to explain the process there, and I will not go deeper into this project. But if somebody has more question to this, I can explain it later. Unfortunately, the jury didn't accept this memorial, so I couldn't introduce the survivors into work of art. But 2001, I got another chance to realize a work with survivors. And this is what I will show you now. Oh, sorry. I realized this project of Jewish memorial in Черновиce. This is in Czech Republic. This project is special not only because this project was initiated by a private initiative. Cernovice is a small town about 100 kilometers southeast from Prague. How does it came to establish there a memorial on a more or less unknown place, you will normally not associate this place with Holocaust. In December 2000, a friend of mine with whom I had grown in Prague in the 50s and 60s, he asked me if I could create some remembrance stone commemorating his grandfather, who was born in this village, and later, in the age of 67, he was murdered in Auschwitz. The friend's vision was to place later such a stone somewhere near to the Jewish cemetery in Черновице. I didn't know this place at all, so we went together there to visit. What did we find there? We came into a small town with no Jews living there today. Even the trace of a synagogue were completely extinguished during the 50s and 60s. The synagogue, which was built in 19th century in New Gothic style, lost completely his charm. And it became an apartment house. Also, the Jewish cemetery, placed about 1 kilometer away from the town, was badly damaged between 1945 and 89. The path, which was leading to the cemetery from the road, disappeared since it was used last time for a Jewish funeral in 1942. So it was covered by grass on the wet meadow. All these were symptoms of forgetting. It was forgotten almost all the Jewish history in this town. So how to react it? How can I, as an artist, contribute to the remembrance on this place? Inspired by the site and because I was dealing with this subject, remembrance, already for many years, I proposed to a friend to leave the initial idea of more or less private single remembrance stone, and to, instead of it, to create a memorial which, with wider dimensions, taking into account the site-specific conditions of the site as well as local history. So what to do? But if we will establish such a memorial, who should be the victims we are talking about? We decided that this memorial should be dedicated to all Jews who were born in Cernovice, or they lived there, or worked there before Second World War, and who were murdered or who survived somehow until 1945. So this was the definition. But how to find their names and other details related to their lives and deaths? The list you see here is one of very few documents about Jews stored in Черновиce Municipality Archive until today. Tragically, it was this list issued by municipality in July 1941, which became a basis for a deportation of Czernovice's Jews to Theresienstadt in November 1942. So then I started to develop the concept and to research in other archives, and I was looking for another names and data. During the search until 2002, more than 50 people were found who fit into our definition. In order to realize such a project, we established a small civic society which runs and maintains the memorial until today. The basic concept I worked out for the Jewish memorial Черновице differs in several aspects significantly from all known Holocaust memorials and monuments that have been set in such places like Theresienstadt, Treblinka, Auschwitz, or others. These ready-made sites, placed on so-called authentic places, are directly linked to the mass murder on European Jews and other groups of victims, and became official remembrance sites designated to be symbols for Holocaust. The necessity of the preservation of these official places of remembrance is not to be questioned. But the question is if the concentration of public awareness only to these main Holocaust centers may paradoxally contribute to suppression of remembrance of Holocaust victims in towns and villages or of their origin. This is maybe a phenomenon which possibly happened in Черновице and in many other places with own history in 30s and 40s. In difference and in contrast to these all well-known Holocaust symbols, the town of Черновице could be described as a typical example of the periphery of Holocaust. This small town is one of 1,000 places in Europe. Their significance is in respect to Holocaust, that the Holocaust victims were deported from there, and it happened under the eyes of the rest of the local population. In contrast to many other memorials, which are built into under the motto "Memento Mori," remember the death, means also to be rooted mainly in the past. The aim of a Jewish memorial of Черновице is commemorate not only the deaths, but also to the survivors of Shoah in the sense of memento vivorium, remember the living. The principle had a significant influence on the design form of the memorial. I will now proceed and justify different design elements of this memorial. The visitors, you and me, staying on this place on the road, looking towards the cemetery, are representing the presence. The existing and living communication between the town and the memorial. The cemetery represents the past. In order to stop the process of forgetting on this place, I designed a clearly visible remembrance path as the central element of a memorial. It connects present and past. The idea of the remembrance stone was, of course, also realized. The stone itself is covered by a reflective surface with an engraved inscription individualizing each person. The left side of the remembrance path is dedicated to the death. This in the analogy to the selection on ramp on the train station of Auschwitz-Birkenau. The right side is dedicated to remember of those who had force, luck, and will to survive. During the year 2002, 42 individual remembrance stones with biographical inscription were installed on the left side and 10 stones for survivors on the right side. In November 10th, 2002, for 60th anniversary of the deportation of Черновиce Jews to Theresienstadt, the memorial was ready to be inaugurated. For this occasion, all stones, as well as the menhir located on the beginning of the Remembrance path, were wrapped by white fabric. At the inauguration ceremony participated about 500 people, citizens from the region and from abroad. Israeli ambassador in Prague was there, as well as a cultural attaché from German embassy in Prague. Also, 2 survivors staying in the middle, I cannot point them, but there are 2 old people here. They were born in the Cernovice, and they survived Theresienstadt, Auschwitz, and other concentration camps. As well as their children participated on the ceremony. During the ceremony, 53 patrons of the Remembrance stones unveiled covered stones and read aloud into the microphone short biographies of the victims engraved into the reflective plate on the top of the stone. Here you can see some examples of the stones. Each stone has individual form, and on the surface you see a mirror where the visitor, the presence, can be reflected and it is going into the history. So he's a part of it. The introductory, the menhir is also covered by mirror, and it has an inscription dedicates the memorial for Cernovice Jews who became victims during the Nazi occupation. An important part of the memorial is a documentary exhibition in the interior of former mortuary. On the wall are placed information boards containing details about the history of Cernovice Jews. In the center of the space, there is a carbonized wooden sculpture, a tree trunk, symbolizing almost extinguished European Jewry during the Holocaust. The central object, symbolizing Auschwitz and other concentration camps, is a small urn which is placed below the wooden sculpture. It is filled with fragments of destroyed crematory in Auschwitz, which the survivor from Cernovice collected there during their visit in 1956. This is all what I wanted to tell you about the Cernovice memorial. I have some booklets here I wrote about this memorial. If somebody is interested on it, I can show it here. And there are small postcards I gave to somebody already here. If somebody wants to go to Cernovice, there is a small map. So thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.